on, and as Steve mentioned, we're talking about an awful lot of old vehicles here. If you're 80, you know on a hot day it doesn't always work the same, so it's always going to be a risk. But on with our next bit, we wanted to show off a couple of big gun tanks. This is a test bed, not a prototype. This particular vehicle, FV fighting vehicle 4005, actually has on it the largest direct fire gun ever put on a tank. And this is an issue that the NATO in the early 1950s were particularly concerned about. What it was is we've seen those bigger Russian tanks at the end of World War II, that all those vehicles that might be coming out. And that starts in the early 1950s, a development program for how can we put a gun as big as this 7.2 inch. It was basically a field howitzer that they've converted to go on a tank. What's going to work? We like the idea. You've been seeing some of the videos on different types of ammunition. We've come up with something called high explosive squash head at the end of the Second World War. Plastic explosive in an armour case, pancakes on the metal when you fire at an enemy tank, and then the shockwave goes through the armour and causes metal to fly around inside the tank. You don't need force behind that round so much as just get it on target, it will do the damage. This 7.2 inch howitzer, the 183 gun as they call it, 183mm, going to go into service. Pop it on a Centurion hull and let's see what works. And quite an amazing development in the mid-50s, dropped though as defence cuts, and also they realised a missile might be able to do the same issue. Put together a design for a super heavy tank, and the idea being if it's a big heavy tank with a bigger gun, it will be in the overwatch position. In other words, it sits there with what the Americans are designing now, the M48 tanks, etc. But this is the big boy to take out the bigger targets. And with the M103, huge great cast turret, the gun they pick, they've actually got an anti-aircraft gun that was called the Stratosphere gun. It could fire a round up to 60,000 feet. So imagine if you then do that at ground level, it's got a lot of welly behind that very big 120mm round. So the Americans trial that, and they put it on this new design that they call the M103 tank. And that again is there to take on those bigger Soviet era tanks. You're not going to have many of them, but there's enough there to supposedly cause a problem. The first tanks are ready in 1954. They're put in a storage shed because they don't work. They've used parts from the M48 production and they're just not up to it. 98 changes are needed on this tank before they think it's fit to issue to the troops. Only 300 are made, the American Army has them. They're only in service till 1960, when they're then handed on to the American Marines. And the reason for that, same as the reason they dropped the 183 gun, is because they realised we can do the same thing with missiles, and these really annoying people, the British, have come along with a gun that completely makes this 120 here redundant. And we're going to see that gun in a moment, the L705mm gun that we put on the Centurion tank. Meanwhile, the American Marines, they always get the, put it bluntly, the kit that everyone else doesn't want. They have this tank in service till the mid-1970s. What's the worst tank you could give them? The biggest and heaviest tank. That's what they ended up. This is actually in US Marine colours, and we met one of the guys who served on this. We get a lot of people come to the tank museum and say, that's my tank. Actually, he was able to show us his signature inside the turret. The turret has to be that big for the size of the gun and the size of the ammunition that's in there, but frankly you could hold a party inside that turret. It is an enormous piece of casting.